social construction, and that's a human invention, not a divine invention. So how can we define male or female biologically, socially, whatever else, when it's a phenomenon beyond us? Let alone, how do we attribute gender to rocks and particles and atoms and all the stuff of the universe? I think that that's a little bit of a nonsense, personally. So I don't think there's a patriarchy. I don't even think of the human race as being gendered per se. We're not men and women, we're people. People first, and people of a particular gender second. So I think that's how I would respond to it, and hopefully that's not completely shutting it down too assertively.
Yeah, I do. I actually do think, yeah, Simon, gender goes beyond biological description. I think, yeah, I guess I'm along Lorinda's lines here too, Simon, in that I do think that the conception of God as patriarchal is probably a retrospective addition to how we are supposed to see God or what God would be, because if we have an infinite God, it just does not suggest to me that God would be male. And I know there's certainly an argument from the Hebrew that there are feminine constructions in the way that God is represented even in the Old Testament, which, if we want a patriarchal society, there is one. I think it's been adopted and used to legitimize a sense of God. No, I agree that male and masculine are not the same thing at all, and there's definitely a difference there. I guess where I come to that with masculinity is that to me, what is and isn't masculine is reasonably culturally assigned. I don't know, I keep bringing up Cordelia Fine, but that's because she's a new discovery of mine this year, and I think she's fascinating in that she looks at what's called neurosexism, which is Sarah, I have been trying to accept you. I'm just not quite sure how to do it. I accepted you a while ago, but it didn't work out. Yeah,
I'm trying to.
On for a second while Lorinda tries to work that out. Yeah, it's this idea that what we think of as masculine and feminine traits are far more widely shared than we like to admit, and that when you actually pop them down and look at whether an individual has them or not, you know, a masculine trait, there's only about a 3% difference in whether it's held by a man or a woman. And a lot of that is to do with cultural conditioning. I have a lot of masculine qualities in the way I perceive the world. I have learned to present myself in ways that are more traditionally feminine to make that more acceptable. But it's not natural. And I'm not transgender. I'm not even close. Like, I do identify as female. I'd imagine that would be compounded massively if I was a transgender person, but I do think that gender is a spectrum rather than a set of binary oppositions, and I don't think that the patriarchal setup that C.S. Lewis gave there is particularly true of how gender works, based on what my reading is. Yeah, no, and it also makes sense, man. If I'm a leader of anything, I really tend to support things that support my claim. That's very much characteristic of how I like to argue. Anything that supports my authority, I'll totally get in on it. So if I was a church leader, I'd be like, oh yeah, you've got to be male and pretty much be me exactly to be in charge of stuff.
Yeah, I read ages ago when I was at church, I read this book called The Divine Romance. I can't remember the author now. And it was trying to sort of suggest the male and female elements of the Trinity. And the whole time I was reading it, I just felt like it was a complete and utter stretch. I think I tend to adhere more to the idea that man and woman functioning effectively together as equals is actually what makes something divine in a way, rather than this arbitrary, you know, God is the Father, Jesus is the Son, and the Holy Spirit is the woman, or any idea like that. It just seems very contrived to try and make that paradigm fit. Yeah.
My understanding is with everything with the nature of God, I don't know him. I think there's that sense. I just don't know. I can't answer it. I think we try and understand God in our own terms, and yeah, we have different biology, and so we try and work out, when God made man in his own image, what does that look like? Is it a male image or a female image? But to what extent is that a physical image anyway? We just don't know. Like, it's not that set out. I mean, I know we'd love it to be, but that's the nature of being a human, trying to understand any kind of God. Surely it's going to be a bit bigger than you can fit on into your brain. Otherwise, what's the point of that?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult as well to differentiate where religion has imposed gender roles and where the cultural and societal thing. So obviously the Bible came out of a patriarchal society, which is written by a lot of, pretty much all men, and there's very, very little female representation in that. And when we look at our society as well, it's only 100 years ago that women got to vote. Even 100 years ago, women were property. And I think in England, women still can't inherit some property. So in the space of 100 years, we've gone from being transferable property that's got a particular value to being individuals, which is huge. So how much of this gender is coming from, how much of the religious idea of gender comes from those privileges, or male privilege, which has existed since the dawn of time, it seems.
You're alluding to the theory of what I really want to believe, and I did actually ask this Cordelia Farm when I went and got a chance to speak to her, if this is, because I want to believe this, because I think this is probably true, is that it's a sign, it's culturally ingrained, etc., etc. If that is true, why is it so bloody universal? Because it's so easy to point a finger at Western culture and look at the embeddedness of Judeo-Christian thinking and how Western culture has developed. But seriously, all over the world, it's like the only cultures where women get to be in charge are mythical. Like, seriously, I would love to be an Amazon if I could be Wonder Woman, but where are the... Interestingly, everyone in my family is a teacher, or everything, not a teacher or a nurse or a hairdresser. That's pretty much the range. But I certainly know of many women who wanted to do jobs that they didn't feel suited to. I mean, I got into law and I did consider it, but